Welcome back to the Logistics and Leadership Podcast. I'm thrilled, and I'll tell a story here shortly, but thrilled to have our next guest on, Megan Reamer, co-founder of Jackson's, formerly known as Jackson's Chips, now Jackson's after the rebrand. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me. It's fun to see you.
So we connected on LinkedIn, and I'm going to tell this story before we get into it, but have been a fan of Jackson's, been buying them. Our kids love them. It's a clean snack that you can devour in a bag and not feel as guilty. But I looked you up on LinkedIn. I see Crested Butte, Colorado. Shout out to our friends, Riley and Christina. They're phenomenal friends of ours, but we traveled to Crested Butte several times to vacation, skied, and then they got married in Crested Butte. We were talking off camera. The only other person I met in Crested Butte that I remember is a gentleman named Pitt who worked at Bones and overserved us tequila last time I visited. What do you know about Pitt, Megan?
Pip is my neighbor. He lives a few blocks away from me.
My God.
Small town. It's a small town. But I drive by his house multiple times a day. Not working at Bones anymore, but working at the restaurant right next to it. It's easy to get overserved tequila at Bones. No judgment. Not saying that in a negative way, but like their margaritas are really strong, and it's just a great Mexican fun time when you're there having some Mexican food.
He
But
might
I will
have
let
to,
wow when I see him that
please
you
do.
that he made an impression on you.
He did, and an impression that I should have forgot because of how much tequila we drank, but unbelievable. I cannot wait till our friends hear this because we still joke about being overserved by Pitt. But Megan, appreciate your time. I'm excited about this conversation. Being a consumer fan of Jackson's for the last couple of years, I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast to tell your story because when I researched it, and read the story, it burned my eyes a little bit, but I'm looking forward to hearing more about it and sharing your story with our audience. So to kick us off, tell us your journey, where the inspiration come from, and we'll go from there.
Well, the brand is named Jackson's, and it's after my oldest son. He had this very long journey with an autoimmune disease, a rare autoimmune disease that was undiagnosed for 12 years. And so over the course of that time, he went from this happy toddler walking, talking to losing all of his motor function, living in a wheelchair, not being able to speak any longer, and no diagnosis. So my husband and I were taking him around the country, going to any specialist really that we thought could help and finding out kind of nuggets of information, but nothing concrete. We just knew that we suspected, I should say, we didn't really know, but it looked so much like someone who has multiple sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease with this regressive global loss of function that we assumed that it was something autoimmune and more importantly, something inflammatory. And so we just tried to adjust his diet and create this anti-inflammatory diet for him. And this was he was born in 2001. This was very kind of starting to become noticeable in like 2003. He finally got a diagnosis in, 2014, and became part of an experimental drug trial in 2000. Now, he must have got a diagnosis in 2015. The drug trial started in 2016. And he got a diagnosis finally through this program at the National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C., which is an amazing, amazing organization and medical facility. But what we were trying to do was just like, how do we feed him food that will not increase inflammation? And just looking at all the carbs, proteins, and fats that we were feeding him and kind of bucketing them, categorizing them as driving inflammation, not driving inflammation. And that was a lot of education on our part to understand, just what that meant, right? Like, I think there's some really easy, some low-hanging fruit in those categories of like, we should probably not be feeding him anything that has like dyes in it or preservatives or kind of high fructose corn syrup and, some sort of basic things that he wasn't even eating anyway. And then we really had to go deep on, what kind of fats are supported for him, what kind of proteins, what kind of carbs. And so I'd say we kind of reverse engineered into this keto diet in 2005 for him, without any products on the shelf to support that. Like we were just making everything from scratch. And so the chip company we ended up starting was a byproduct of making these in our home for many years and cooking them in a specific oil because we were avoiding seed oils and like polyunsaturated vegetable oils, um, as kind of inflammatory drivers. And so we were cooking in lard and tallow and coconut oil and avocado oil. And waiting for another brand, like some of the alternative, like even Boulder Canyon and Kettle and some of those other larger brands to introduce chips in the oils we were using. And we were using sweet potatoes as a different like root vegetable, right? Instead of a nightshade, all these other conversations. Anyway, no, they weren't launching this. And it was like around 2011, 2012. And I kind of just started to put a bug in my husband's ear around starting our own company and having this story in a way to share Jackson's story and what he'd been through in just a really positive way. So that's the root of how we started Jackson's. Just, a restrictive diet that we had to accommodate, and then see kind of opening that up and seeing if other people, were living in that same space and reading labels for the same thing we were.
So was this doctor recommended? I know you guys are traveling all over the country trying to figure out what exactly, is the diagnosis. How can we help Jackson, alleviate some of these symptoms that he's experiencing? Or was this educated, you did your research, you just dug into this and you started experimenting with different foods? Tell us more about that. What did that look like?
It was a lot of trial and error. It wasn't doctor prescribed because yeah, I mean, we were really kind of hung out to dry by the medical community. Like they were running the tests they knew how to run, but when they were all coming back normal and within normal ranges and there wasn't any answer in those tests, then it was like, will send you to genetics or metabolics or whatever. And, and, and so we were just kind of struggling and trying to figure that out on our own. Um, So this diet became like we'd had sort of conversations about a keto diet, but when we were talking to doctors about this and it was medically prescribed, it was really just for managing seizure activity, right? This was like in 2005, 6, 7. Managing seizures and epilepsy. So either a seizure disorder like epilepsy or something even more drastic and significant as an illness. And we sort of didn't know that's what we were trying to do. We just knew if we feed him a lot of fats and they're healthy fats and they're good fats, he's sleeping better and he's gaining weight. And it was very cause and effect. And so it was really self-taught. Like my husband went really deep in like lipid chemistry and understanding fats in particular, because the proteins and carbs we had a really good idea about. Um, the fats were new to us because like I'm older than you are. I grew up in this era of like low fat, no fat, fats are bad. And so, I wasn't avoiding them, but I didn't know that there were better ones than others and that there could be something called a healthy fat. And so that was a lot of education on our own. And again, this was like my son was born in 2001. So he's starting to show these symptoms like late 2002, just some muscle weakness, not really anything more than that. But just a little like harder for him to move and his muscles were tired. And I was having another baby already. Like they were 18 months apart, my two oldest kids. And so when I started to ask questions about him to doctors, they were like, no, he's met all his milestones. He's fine. He can feed himself. He's tracking. He's doing all these things. He's walking. He's a boy. Boys develop a little later, right? And I was kind of ignored and dismissed for probably 6 months. but there was no real internet. Like we were looking up medical journals and going to those places. There were of course no, there was no like Facebook group to be part of or um just chat rooms and other parents to connect with, let alone like medical information and advice or possibilities. And so it felt a lot like a chicken with its head cut off because we were pursuing all of these things to try to stop what was happening and see if we could reverse it and then find an answer. Like, well, what is even going on? So they were really difficult years. And so when it came to like when we started talking about developing, like launching this business, I think that was the reason my husband, who's very has always worked in finance and on Wall Street and is very practical. And initially was like, that's a really terrible idea. There's no market for your business. Like you make no money, so competitive. And I said, well, how competitive could it be? Like there's all these chip brands on the aisle, like on the shelf, right? And he's like, they're all owned by like three big companies. Like it is hard. And so I think the like rallying point for us became a way to share this story and something that we had just this lived experience that was so hard and challenging for our son. And then, he's the oldest, like I have three other kids. And so it became this really kind of positive opportunity to share what we'd been through.
So this becomes, I'm assuming, a fun hobby at first, where
Yeah.
you're cooking with your family, you guys are enjoying it. I know Jacksons are tossed out in the snack bags every July 4th in the parade. I'm assuming you all start sharing with your neighbor Pip, and then other other than I might throw Pip in there like 5 more times, but you start spreading the
It was an
love.
early taster. Yes, an early taster. Yeah, that's what happened. It was very grassroots and very organic growth. Like we started sharing these chips and we had been already. And, our house was always this sort of like kitchen experiment, right? Our kids' friends would come over and they'd be like, oh my gosh, your house smells so weird. Like we always had broth brewing and like sauerkraut for something fermenting, right? We're making our own kombucha and, it, kids would come over like it did not smell like their homes, right? And so, but we would make these chips and feed them to friends and potlucks and all these things that happen in our little town. And people would say, like, first they'd say, have you guys ever thought about starting a chip company? And then they'd say, you guys should go on Shark Tank. Like, you have a great story and you have a great product and you'd be great on Shark Tank. And both of those things felt very foreign to me. Like, I I I didn't really know how to start a company. I kind of wasn't an entrepreneur. I was a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids who like needed to do everything for my oldest child, right? And so we were in the thick of it and didn't really see how we had extra time to start a company, but we did and we figured it out. And so initially we were buying our potatoes locally in Colorado and making them at a commercial kitchen. Like, again, you've been to my tiny town, but it is small. Like, we have one main street. We have no box stores. There's no like Starbucks or anything like that. There's probably maybe 3,000 people, 2,500 people full time, very locked in the winter from like October to April.
I would promote it, but I don't want to promote it. So like, I don't want more people crowding the hidden
I
gem of
agree.
Crescent.
I agree with you. It's gorgeous, but don't come here. No, I we did just have a huge 4th of July parade. It's a big event in our town. And yes, we throw out chips from this old truck that we have. And we threw out thousands of bags of chips and still didn't have enough
Wow.
for the crowd. And yeah, I want to say there were about 10,000 people lining this main street. And it's a fantastic parade. Again, too crowded, don't come. Like you wouldn't enjoy it. But
Yeah. For one small airport, but yeah.
one smaller part, not easy to get into. But that was how we started it, right? Like just sharing with friends and they'd say, well, we'd say, well, we were thinking of starting a company. And like, what are you gonna name it? Oh, we're gonna name it Jackson's. And and it took a little bit for people to kind of tie together like what these chips had to do with Jackson and this experience that he'd been through. Um, but yeah, it turned out to be this wonderful journey that my whole family was part of, and our kids would help us fry chips in the beginning, and they were young, like 3, 6, 9, 12.
It
I
couldn't
think
with
they
kids,
were
not
their
easy.
ages.
It couldn't with
It's not
think
easy.
of it, yeah. So
Yeah.
what would go ahead.
No,
Couldn't
no,
with
I wasn't gonna say
couldn't with
anything.
oh, what was a turning point? I mean, obviously this starts to get a lot of traction locally, but what was a turning point for your husband? Because he was definitely hesitant, it sounds like,
Yeah.
for him to
No,
be
it's a
like,
great
"Okay."
question. He was hesitant, and he was our main chip fryer. So he was like working the day job, and then at night we would take all of our stuff, the oil, the potatoes, all the stuff, go to this little commercial kitchen that our friends owned, and they were caterers, so they were working all day, and we'd go until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And he was like using a mandolin to slice the potatoes, and we were frying. So we had one little Facebook page, and a website. And so we were just, kind of supplying our little health food store in our town, and had an online shop. I wouldn't even say it was a shop. It wasn't like Shopify where you could kind of put things in a basket and order them. We would like open it because we had some inventory because we'd been making chips for like 3 weeks straight. And then we'd close it when it sold out, right? That was what turned his mind into thinking that this was maybe a need, that there was a need out there, at least. Not necessarily it was a legitimate business, but that like we were filling some kind of gap, because within the first 3 months of doing that, we shipped to all 50 states in like 10 different countries. And we were, I was going to like the little post office in Crested Butte and sending these boxes out every day. And so that kind of signal for him was like, let's think about this a little bit more. Like maybe we're onto something here. And then, we did that for about 9 more months, and like tried to find a co-packer to help us in the meantime, which we ended up finding this amazing partner and got super lucky. Like throughout this whole experience of starting this business, there were these critical moments where it seemed like there was some divine intervention, or there was some like, hand of God. There was some, and I'm not preachy. I'm not like preaching that, but there was something supporting us, whatever you believe in, whatever energy that is, because we find these opportunities like when our backs were against the wall, and then we'd get the phone call like, "Oh, hey, I have 40,000 pounds of potatoes. Do you guys need to buy any?" And we're like, "Oh my gosh!" Like you literally heard what we were saying.
It's funny how that works, and, you all clearly have a deeply rooted mission that you're unbelievably passionate about. You're still heavily involved in the business. But what year is this roughly? Is this 2011,
This is
2012?
2012 and 13 primarily, like when we're setting up what our manufacturing process is going to look like, trying to find the co-packer, setting up some kind of supply chain. That was 2012 and 13. And we launched with our first retailer, which was Natural Grocers, in late 2013. And then pretty quickly, like in January of 2014, we launched in the Rocky Mountain region of Whole Foods with just two SKUs, two products, a white potato and a sweet potato, both cooked in organic coconut oil.
So what year was Shark Tank? Was that
2017.
2017? So you have 5 years where you're growing this business that started in your kitchen, and are you hiring employees? Are you building a team?
Yeah.
What did that look like to get to that point? Because 5 years growing a CPG brand, specifically with potato chips, it's not an easy feat.
No, it's not an easy feat. And we always had a really small team. So we outsourced our manufacturing. We always worked with a co-man until kind of recently in the past several years. And our team at max, like number of people for sales, marketing, operations, finance, was like 10 people. So we were all just working our tails off and building something quickly.
So rumor has it you were the transportation manager. One of the hats you were wearing was it transportation manager. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's true. I was doing all of our transportation and logistics from 2012 to kind of like 2017, 2018. A long time.
And you're just figuring it out on the fly, or tell us more there.
Yes.
What's your thought process going into that? Hey, we demand is really picking up. We need to get you know more of a infrastructure for our supply chain to make sure that we're executing on demand.
Yeah, it was challenging because, well, first of all, I didn't know anything, and there's a lot of acronyms in the logistics world, right? Like LTL, FTL, BOL, like all these things that I didn't know what they meant. And so I really leaned on these partners that we had who were fantastic for us, to kind of explain everything to me, right? And I would say my thought process was very naive, quite honestly, because, trying to set up a load of like picking up from our manufacturing facility and delivering it to one of our distributors and all of the things that can go sideways in that process. If I didn't have the right paperwork, if I didn't have the right appointment set up and scheduled, and then it was missed and the driver got delayed, right? Like all of these pieces, that is one person's and multiple people on a team, their primary job, right? So I just had like Excel spreadsheets that I was tracking everything. And just like really leaning on our partners to try to help me and our co-packer. Like we had an amazing, amazing co-packer. The first one we worked with was in Denver, so it was only a few hours from where we live, and they were career manufacturers, right? And so uh they knew this like the back of their hand, but they also were wonderfully kind people and loved our story and loved why we were doing this, and really took us under their wing and taught me and my husband, like, because he was always kind of building out the other parts of the supply chain, like the potato sourcing, working with the farmers, the oil suppliers. And so, he worked with the co-packer team in a different capacity than I did. Um, but they helped us both so much, like really educated us about all of the like specificity of logistics, which there's a lot. And we got to a place where, we had to use a 3PL. And so then we were, offloading supply and inventory to a different location and getting pickups done there. And then we were doing like pick and pack and fulfilling orders out of there. And so, um, yeah, I mean, it was just learning every day something.
And I'm assuming that your husband at one point left his career and went all in, full blown Jax's. Is that what happened?
Yes,
Or okay,
he did. But it was late. It was late. It was like well after Shark Tank that he did that.
okay.
Mm.
All right. Well, let's talk Shark Tank. Everyone knows it, but I'm interested to hear because I don't know the full story here.
Yeah, no, it's great. Shark Tank was a great experience.
Is that something you applied for and then they interviewed
No,
you?
we
Right.
got really lucky. It's actually kind of interesting. I didn't realize how lucky we got until after we were on, and I did this other event for Shark Tank that I'll mention. But our experience was that so we live in Colorado. The Denver Post ran this article about our son and our business and everything kind of we've talked about already in February of 2017, and the ABC producers for Shark Tank saw that article. And I think that's part of their process, right? Like they have that as part of how they find the companies. And they reached out to us and asked us if we had ever considered being on Shark Tank, what our thoughts were about it. And I was quite honestly like kind of scared about it. I mean, I wanted to keep this in such a positive mental place for me because it was so hard too, like everything we were doing. That I didn't want to go on and get like browbeaten by any of these sharks, right? And so that was some of my hesitation. And at that point, we were already at like $10 million in revenue and national distribution. And, some of the things that I think companies and entrepreneurs hope to accomplish by going on is this exposure that, results in increased revenues. Of course, we needed more revenue and like the exposure is massive, but we just thought we might be too big for their kind of prototype ideas and initial launch, like very early stage. So they talked us into it and said, no, we really want to show this stage because this is also like a very difficult stage in the life cycle of a business, which it was. We needed a lot of money and we needed to be able to grow to the next kind of step, right? And so over the course of they probably reached out to us in March. And so between March and May, we signed all the documents. It's like a lot of paperwork. You kind of feel like you're signing your life away and you're writing all that stuff. Because you are like agreeing to not use their collateral material in certain ways and that kind of stuff. But, we would I'd say like every other week or so, we'd get a request from the producers. Like, can you send us a video talking about this? Like, can you share this information with us? And like, we would video ourselves and send it. So we never really knew where we were in that process. It was all like, give us this and we'll let you know. And then in late May, they said, we would really like to invite you to come and pitch. And can you come in June and do it? So our experience is really different than people who go and audition and pitch to their crew. And they're sort of, like they have probably 3 or 4 different people that sit there and listen to all these pitches, and they do an amazing job. And I was listening. So they invited me after we had aired and all this stuff. They were doing a Heartland audition. And they did that in Lincoln, Nebraska. So they invited me to come to Lincoln, Nebraska with 4 other people. Like we were on this panel the night before the auditions. It was so fun. It was so fun. We were in this sold out auditorium in Lincoln. We were all sitting on the stage. It was kind of like a TED Talk and sharing our experience. And the thing about being on Shark Tank is, you're kind of like, they vet you to see if you have personality and can like carry yourself on television, right? And you're sort of TV worthy. So the other like Shark Tank finalists and the other people who had been on Shark Tank participants had really engaging stories, were really fun people. Like it was a really entertaining night. And then the next day, we were all part of the auditions, like listening to different parts of the auditions with their Shark Tank producers and crew. And there had to have been like 50,000 people there. And every person got their opportunity to come in and pitch for a certain amount of time. Like I can't, they do an extraordinary job listening to every single pitch that comes through their door and that they have access to. And they narrow that down to like 110 people that they invite to Los Angeles to walk down, out into the tank and pitch. And of the 110-ish people, they air about 80 of those folks. So you could go, you could get a deal, you could like have everything work for you and still not show on television, like air on television. And it's very non-committal on their part. So we went, we pitched, we had this handshake deal with our shark. We immediately started due diligence with him. We still had no idea if we were ever going to air. Like they don't commit to that at all. They tell you like 2 weeks before, here's when you're going to air. And then we were scrambling to like make sure that our website could accommodate all of the traffic and that we had inventory and, all of those pieces to air nationally. And it is an enormous, it's an enormous like jump in all of that stuff. So like the response that we had and the pieces that we needed to have in place for inbound emails and questions and orders and, on our own website as well as Amazon, like it's hard to prepare in kind of 2 weeks that they give you.
I can only imagine. Being a mother of 4 and building a CPG brand I can't wrap my head around it. So props to you. Where's the resilience and positive mindset come from? You're like smiling from ear to ear, and I'm just putting myself in your shoes, imagining this journey that you've been on to this point.
Yeah, it was hard. And so I think our point of reference was always Jackson. And I'll say this like as a sort of ours is a unique experience, right? Because we had lived in this space with him for so long without knowing what was going on and just dealing with everything day to day and continuing to search, continuing to try to find answers for him. But, this real uncertainty around what his life was going to be like or how long we'd have him in our lives. And so everything we did for the business really paled in comparison to that. So our point of reference was extreme on like, is this hard? Is what we're doing like trying to source X number of thousands of pounds of potatoes challenging? Is this hard? Like, our distributor didn't receive this truckload of chips. Like, no, it really wasn't. Like, yes, it was a problem and we had to solve for it, but our point of reference was so extreme that it didn't seem as challenging as that. Like it is challenging. And so I will say that the other entrepreneurs that I've met, particularly in this food space, I don't know, they just have grit. Like they just kind of stick through it. And without having that passion, like our passion was our son. I say most have this sort of underlying reason to be around why they're doing it, probably across all industries. That's what keeps you going at 2 in the morning or 8 in the morning when you're solving like putting out the first fire of the day, right?
Yes.
So I don't know. It's a personality type, I think, too.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think to your point, everyone has their why or their reason for doing what they're doing. I think if you don't have that, that's what separates the people that reach success and the people that do not, because the people that do not simply stop majority of the time and they didn't
Yeah.
continue to pursue whatever mission they were on. So, you know, the mission is incredible. The story is, even more incredible. You are in 10,000 stores.
I think it's like I asked this question 2 weeks ago. So we have our own plant outside of Milwaukee, amazing facility, an amazing team of people who run it and run the business as well. And so I asked them this question specifically, like, what do you think our TPD is? Like, what do you think our total points of distribution? And they couldn't answer that. Like, saying 10,000 is like cutting it extremely, extremely low. Like it's very underestimating it. Their guesses were kind of around the 50,000 and higher TPDs. And that includes like convenience stores and airport and all these other places that you see us besides Costco, which is an amazing partner for us. And like we sell a lot of chips there. Um, and are launching, we just launched a new product, veggie straws. But
I saw that.
um,
That's big.
yes, they're wonderful. I'll
Take
get
care
a
of the
little
concept stuff, please.
they're great. I mean, we're really excited about them. They've been hard to nail down as far as needing to purchase additional equipment and getting the right formula in place to, continue to promote and support and advocate for like our platform and what we believe in besides avocado oil, always, using avocado oil, but, kind of what we need our recipe to look like as far as the quality and the type of ingredients. And so they took, they took a while to figure that out, and we're really excited to just be able to launch them now in the last like 2 weeks.
Well, I found you in Kroger a couple years ago. Been buying it since. I don't know. I haven't found it in our Northern Kentucky Costco, but
Hmm.
uh,
I need to get on
maybe,
that.
maybe they're just constantly sold out. That'd probably be best case for you all.
Yeah, that's the explanation. That's right, Justin. They're constantly sold out.
That'd be the win right there. But so, May, you all have gone through a lot. I know you haven't. We don't have enough time for you to probably share every challenge you face along the way, but that early phase, I think there's a lot of CPG, owners or entrepreneurs that get into the space. They always believe in their product, but does everyone else believe in that product? I think when you have a story like yours, it just makes that product so much better. Not that it's not already a great product, but as a consumer, I'm going to buy that or the next one simply because like you feel that emotional attachment to the story as well. if someone doesn't have that, or if someone's just in that early phase where they're facing a lot of adversity, what advice do you give to some of those entrepreneurs who are hitting a roadblock and they just need to find a way over that?
I mean, I would say stick with it, right? Like it's easy advice to give. It's really hard to live. And I think, there are so many challenges, and you could have a product that everyone loves that's selling really well, but you don't have funding, right? You don't have the right capital in place to make it, or to support it at the retailer. And so trying to get all of those foundational elements and pillars in place for the business, it was a challenge that we ran into consistently. And I would say there are a lot of other folks out there to help try to navigate that, right? Maybe they're not going to give you $1 million that you need it, but those networks are pretty supportive for trying to solve some of those initial issues. Um, I don't know. I think that there are. I think that there are reasons why you start what you're doing that you recognize are the bigger mission and the bigger impact that you want to create. And so for me, I had like sleepless nights thinking like, how are we going to pay our employees next week? I really have no idea like where we're getting this money from. I just felt like there was something bigger. The reason we were doing this was beyond me and beyond my husband, but it was, meaningful in some capacity, certainly for our son and the rest of our kids, but that there was just this bigger picture around why we were doing it. And that really helped me get through a lot of those really challenging, stressful, terrifying moments of years of growing this and starting it, right? And then we ended up finding these amazing partners um, who were able to help put all of those pieces in place. And now it's just, humming on all cylinders.
What's next? And what you all built is incredible. And I imagine you never imagined it turning out to be this big. But what's next? Like, do you just keep reinventing yourself? You got the Betty straws coming. What do you all want next?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what we all want is to continue to grow this business into the opportunities that we see ahead of us. And, whether that's on our own, whether that's with a bigger partner, whatever that means. But we really believe in the products we're putting out in the world and on the shelf. And we want to continue to innovate around that and just do a great job doing that. And, continue Jackson's legacy, and really continue to share what, he represented and what he stood for.
I'm gonna let you answer this, but my final question in every episode is, what do you want your legacy to be? And not only that, what do you want Jackson's legacy to be?
That's a heavy question, isn't it? I think I can speak for Jackson, and say that I want his legacy to be just that he lived a great life. He touched people's hearts and he lived a great life. And my own to be that I supported him as best I could.
I told myself I was reading deeper into Jackson's story, and I mentioned my eyes burning. I'm a sensitive guy, so you got me going. But I would say you would agree with that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you sharing that. What is there? And our production team, I knew I was going to cry on this.
I'm crying too, so it's okay.
I have 3 kids of my own, and again, I can only put myself in your shoes. So you can't wrap your head around it. So
Yeah.
God bless
I
you
mean,
guys. I can only imagine what you've been through.
well, I think so. Jackson passed away in 2017. Right after, right after we'd gone to Los Angeles to pitch for Shark Tank, right before we were going to air on Shark Tank. And so he was included in that footage. the Shark Tank crew came to our town and did this extended home segment. And so they showed this beautiful town that we live in and talked about him. And then he passed away very unexpectedly, like 3 days later, as a complication from his drug trial, his experimental trial he was on. So I think for us to continue to be able to like engage at Jackson's and work there and keep the business moving forward and hold our family tight and help everyone, move, like put one step in front of the other and grieve and feel that loss and feel like we were continuing to make something positive out of it. And like we were lucky, we could say Jackson's name every day, multiple times a day, right? And it wasn't painful. I mean, of course, there were times and it was, a process that we were living very publicly through this business and with retailers. Like they really were affected by this loss that we had as well. Like some of these buyers that we became very close with. And so, but it was all, even in light of all of that emotion, it was all very meaningful and impactful for me and for my husband and for our kids and for our team members. And so I think we were really lucky that we had this business to lean into after he passed away. That still today reminds me of him. And like I get to say his name in this podcast and talk about him. And so, that to me is his legacy. Like that keeps him alive. And so I really enjoy that a lot.
What a powerful message and powerful legacy. And I think that may have been his way of letting you all know you all got this. You mentioned the higher level, the higher level experiences that you all went through, where it seemed like you're at a dead end, and Jackson's found a way through. So, yeah, I mean that's an incredible story. Jackson's legacy, I think, will definitely live on, especially as Jackson's grows. But for you, Megan, I don't know if you speak for your husband. It may differ, but what about your legacy?
Um, I'm, at the end of the day, I'm a mom. I am, dedicated to my children and my family, and that's my priority. And that's, I'm always just everything I do, all of these opportunities that I have through Jackson's and meeting people and interacting and communicating and, like doing this fun, lovely podcast, like that's all for, that's all for them and all for just, being able to continue to build that experience for them and build some meaning out of what they do in their lives and what we do as a family.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that. It's strong. I think, my advice, I can't speak for Megan, but my advice is, start CPG brand as difficult as might be, just have kids, because there's nothing that's going to be harder than that.
I don't know.
Man, thank you. Seriously, I appreciate it. I do. I told my wife knows how I've been chasing my wife since we were like in 6th grade.
Sweet.
So she knows me forward and backward. And, she obviously knows the story of Jackson's, and she was like, "You think you'll hold it together today?" And I was like, "No chance. There's no chance." So.
Oh no, that's what makes it meaningful. Like that's, otherwise it's just a business that makes trips. The meanings and the emotion and the connection.
Yeah, exactly.